it is time to talk about some of the water cooler topics following the Canadian Grand Prix. And if it sounds like I'm talking a little bit quiet or talking funny, it's because I am. It is 5 a.m. on the dot following the Canadian Grand Prix here in Japan, and my wife is sleeping, so I got to keep it a little quiet, all right? But we're going to start off with the biggest topic, obviously, coming out of this race, and that is going to be that Lando Norris, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on who you're a fan of, just can't handle pressure, and he always seems to, lose his way even when he has the pace. And, we've seen it a lot last year with his championship fight with Max Verstappen, that he just couldn't put it together when it really mattered and ultimately ended up losing the championship to him, even though McLaren definitely had the dominant car in the latter half of the season. And this is one of the first times we've really seen him go wheel to wheel with Oscar Piastri. He ended up chasing him down later on in the race here in Canada. And as soon as they went wheel to wheel, it started to look good. And then Norris, just cracks under pressure, ends up running straight into the back of Piastri on the main straight and puts himself into the wall. And I think this pretty much just seals the fact that Lando Norris is not built to handle pressure. Oscar Piastri is, cool, calm, and collected in the car and was able to soak that up, end up catching back up to Antonelli and getting within DRS. And then, Lando launched his, trademark Canada move into the hairpin, which, led them wheel to wheel. And like I said, that it was pretty good racing at first, coming out of the hairpin down the straight. Nice little move from Piastri on the brakes with the inside line to get through the chicane into the wall of champions. Norris obviously still had a pretty good run with the DRS, but proceeds to, make a last second move where there just wasn't a gap, runs right in the back of Piastri and puts himself in the wall. I don't really know where you go from here. I mean, he just dropped a ton of points to both Verstappen and Piastri. I don't want to say this is championship done because we are only 10 races into the season, but I mean, he's showing over and over again that he's not able to handle the pressure. So it's definitely not a good look for him. We're definitely going to have to see what happens in Austria because he had, a clash with Max Verstappen last year in Austria. So he just can't handle the pressure, and he's liable to make these mistakes, especially when it comes down to these tight moments that are kind of pivotal, to a championship challenge throughout an entire season. You can't make these kind of mistakes when it's this tight, especially when you're competing with your teammate who's in equal machinery. So that's definitely going to be the biggest topic coming out of this race. It's what everyone is going to be talking about. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the other things that I think are going to be huge talking points throughout the week following the Canadian Grand Prix. I think the next biggest one is obviously going to be Mercedes. George Russell converted on his pole position and made good on last year by winning the Canadian Grand Prix. But Kimi Antonelli made a huge move on Oscar Piastri at the start of the race. And thankfully, to the safety car and him battling with Norris, thanks to all that, Kimi Antonelli is now the third youngest person to get a podium in Formula One history, and I think that makes really, really good on his potential. There's been a lot of talk lately about Kimi Antonelli, kind of dropping the ball and having a bad spurt of races, and I didn't really think it was warranted in the first place because I didn't really attribute some of that to Antonelli. Obviously, he had 2 DNFs in that triple header, but both were to car failure. It had really nothing to do with anything he did. Unlike, maybe someone else that we're going to talk about here soon. But Kimi Antonelli is looking like Rookie of the Year pretty clearly. I mean, there are some pretty good rookies coming into the season. Of course, he's the only one still left in a top team. So maybe, Antonelli was always going to be Rookie of the Year. But I do think that Hadjar has been looking really good. However, I think this seals the deal that as long as Antonelli can stay clean the rest of the season, and the fact that he got a podium at only 18 years old, and like I said, is now the third youngest podium winner in the history of Formula One, I mean, it bodes well for Antonelli's future, especially there with Mercedes. We'll have to see what, Mercedes chooses to do with George now. Obviously, they've been in contract talks because George is no longer under contract as of next year. I'm sure they're going to get a deal done unless, for some reason Max Verstappen wants to come to the team. But I think that's going to be a huge talking point after this, and I think that this is going to put Kimi Antonelli in a really nice swing of things for the rest of the season. Next, I want to talk about the person I was mentioning in the last one, Alex Albon. Retired last week with a power unit issue after having a really, really rough race where he destroyed the front wing a couple times. And it kind of looked like this race was going the same way. And he ended up with a power unit issue that they said he had last weekend that caused him to retire, but it wasn't as bad. But he did end up retiring. However, we're not really sure what the issue is. I'm sure we'll get some clarification throughout the week because James Vowles is really good at, communicating with the fans and letting people know what happened. But he did decide to launch it over the grass after fighting with Colapinto. I don't know, again, if that's what led to the power unit issue or what maybe made it worse. But definitely another scrappy race from Albon, and I don't really know what's been happening with him lately. He's been having a lot of, scrappy races since Carlos Sainz came to the team. I think a lot of people were surprised that he's kind of dominating Carlos Sainz the way he is. However, you still don't want to have these scrappy type of races, especially when you do have a teammate like Carlos Sainz who signed up for the long term with Williams. Some honorable mentions. Lawson ends up retiring, because they wanted to conserve the power unit. The Saubers looked really good this weekend with Hulkenberg grabbing another load of points. And I believe after the Norris retirement at the end, he ended up finishing P8. And I'm not sure if Gabriel Bortoleto ended up getting points. He might have. So another really, really good look for the Saubers and another amazing weekend for Nico Hulkenberg. All in all, I think this Canadian Grand Prix was one of the best that we've seen in a very long time, and I think the Canadian Grand Prix is one of the better races on the calendar every year, but this is easily going to go down as top two, maybe the best race of the season so far. So let's see what the rest of the season has to hope for. Let's see what the rest of the season has in store for us, but this was one of the better races, and I think that this is a very, very pivotal race for the World Championship. But I'll see you guys next weekend with the water cooler talks after the Austrian Grand Prix. See ya.